Starship Flight 9 hook. The entire internet was screaming Flight 9 just destroyed SpaceX's Launchpad. Twitter exploded. News sites went crazy. Millions believed the worst had happened again. But then Elon dropped a bombshell response that left everyone speechless. When those 33 engines fired on May 27th, something shocking occurred. Not what the fake headlines claimed, but the real truth behind SpaceX's most controversial test yet. The FAA stayed silent. SpaceX said nothing. Yet the rumor mill went absolutely insane. What Elon revealed next will blow your mind and expose the biggest lie in space news this year. Let's dive right in. Starship Flight 9 main content. The timeline that changed everything. Here's exactly what happened on that Tuesday morning in Texas and why the world got it completely wrong. May 27, 2025, 7 a.m. Central Time. Starbase was buzzing with tension. Two technical holds had already delayed the launch. First, an engine issue, then problems with the fueling system. Red flags were everywhere, but nobody expected what came next. At 7:25 a.m., those 33 Raptor engines roared to life. With 16.7 million pounds of thrust, that's enough force to lift the Empire State Building straight into space. For 2 minutes and 45 seconds, everything looked perfect. Booster 14-2 and Ship 35 separated flawlessly. The crowd cheered. SpaceX engineers smiled. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. When perfect becomes catastrophic. Booster 14-2 was supposed to make history. This wasn't just any booster. It was SpaceX's first reused Super Heavy, the holy grail of rocket engineering. Instead of throwing away a $100 million booster after one flight, SpaceX was proving they could fly it again and again. The booster completed its boost phase perfectly. It flipped around for its return journey, everything by the book. Then, at 4 minutes and 12 seconds into the flight, disaster struck in the most violent way possible. One Raptor engine didn't just fail, it exploded. You're driving at 200 miles per hour and your engine doesn't just stop. It literally blows apart. That's what happened to Booster 14-2, except it was traveling at 3,000 miles per hour through the atmosphere. The explosion ripped through the booster like a bomb. Metal fragments scattered everywhere. The entire vehicle began breaking apart in real time. But here's the twisted part. SpaceX had actually planned for this exact scenario. They called it within acceptable test parameters. How do you plan for catastrophic failure? And why would you want to? The upper stage mystery at nobody saw coming. While everyone was watching the booster disintegrate, something far more sinister was happening 50 miles above Earth. Sister Ship 35, the upper stage, had reached space successfully. Main engine cutoff occurred exactly on schedule. For a brief moment, it seemed like at least half the mission was saved. Then the unthinkable happened. Tank pressure began dropping. Not slowly, rapidly. Propellant was leaking somewhere inside the spacecraft. But here's the terrifying part. In space, you can't just pull over and fix a leak. Once those tanks lose pressure, you lose everything. Ship 35 started tumbling. A 160-foot-tall skyscraper spinning uncontrollably through space. The spacecraft's computers fought desperately to maintain control. But physics was winning. Without attitude control, the planned re-entry burn became impossible. At 6 minutes and 18 seconds, contact was lost completely. Ship 35 fell into the Indian Ocean, taking millions of dollars of cutting-edge technology with it. But the real question everyone was asking was, what happened to the Launchpad? The Launchpad conspiracy that fooled millions. This is where the story gets absolutely insane. Within hours of the flight, social media exploded with claims. Starship Flight 9 destroyed the Launchpad. Photos circulated. Videos went viral. News outlets picked up the story. The narrative spread like wildfire across every platform. But here's what nobody bothered to check. The FAA, the federal agency responsible for investigating spaceflight accidents, released their official statement. Zero mention of Launchpad destruction. None. They reported no injuries, no damage to public property, and classified both vehicle losses as within acceptable test parameters. SpaceX's own post-flight summary told a completely different story. Instead of talking about catastrophic infrastructure damage, they mentioned improvements underway and preparation for the next flight. If the pad was destroyed, wouldn't that be kind of important to mention? Yet somehow, millions of people believe the launch pad was obliterated. How does that happen? The 2023 trauma that haunts every launch. To understand why people believe the fake news so easily, we need to go back to April 20th, 2023, Flight 1, the day SpaceX learned a brutal lesson about rocket engine power. When 33 Raptor engines fired for the first time together, they produced something nobody fully anticipated. The thrust didn't just push the rocket up, it literally excavated the ground beneath it. Concrete chunks the size of cars flew hundreds of feet. A massive crater appeared where solid ground used to be. The aftermath looked like a bomb had exploded under the launch pad. Debris scattered across nearby wetlands. Environmental groups sued the FAA. The entire program nearly got shut down before it really began. That image, that crater, burned into everyone's memory. So when Flight 9 launched from the same pad, people's minds immediately jumped to the worst-case scenario. Past trauma created present panic. But SpaceX had learned from 2023. They installed a water deluge system. Massive amounts of water now absorb and redirect engine thrust during liftoff. They relocated critical fueling equipment. The entire pad infrastructure was reinforced. So why did everyone assume history repeated itself? The infrastructure reality check. Here's what actually happened to Pad A during Flight 9. The launch imposed significant stress on the infrastructure. That's undeniable. 33 engines producing 16.7 million pounds of thrust will stress any structure on Earth. But significant stress is very different from complete destruction. SpaceX has developed a routine for refurbishing Pad A between flights. It typically takes 2 and 3 weeks. This isn't emergency repair work, it's planned maintenance, like changing the oil in your car. Except your car weighs 11 million pounds and shoots fire. Meanwhile, construction continues on Pad B. This new launch mount features a reinforced flame trench with thick steel walls specifically designed to handle Starship's tremendous power. It's basically Pad A's bigger, stronger sibling. If Pad A was truly destroyed, SpaceX would be rushing to complete Pad B. Instead, they're proceeding with their normal timeline. The evidence speaks for itself, but here's the question that reveals everything: the regulatory reality that exposes the truth. The FAA has launched a formal mishap investigation into Flight 9. This is standard procedure when vehicles are lost during test flights. SpaceX cannot launch again until this investigation concludes and they receive regulatory approval. But here's the critical detail everyone missed. The investigation focuses on vehicle failures, not infrastructure damage. If the launch pad was destroyed, that would trigger a completely different type of investigation. Environmental assessments, safety reviews, months or years of delays. None of that is happening. Elon Musk has publicly stated that future flights could follow every 3-4 weeks, once cleared. That timeline only makes sense if the basic infrastructure is intact and functional. You can't launch every month from a destroyed pad. The federal license authorizing 25 Starship launches per year from Starbase remains active. No regulatory findings suggest long-term disruption to that plan. Everything points to the same conclusion. The launch pad survived Flight 9. The data that demolishes the conspiracy. But wait, there's more evidence that completely destroys the fake news narrative. Flight 9 actually generated what SpaceX calls a lot of good data. The staging worked perfectly. The upper stage reached space and executed main engine cutoff successfully. Even the heat shield performed better than expected, showing minimal damage. These aren't the results you get from a catastrophically failed test. These are incremental improvements building toward operational readiness. Each flight, even those ending in vehicle loss, provides essential insights for the next attempt. SpaceX's internal assessment focuses on vehicle refinement, not infrastructure reconstruction. Their engineering teams are analyzing propellant tank pressurization, engine reliability, and re-entry procedures, not launch pad repairs. The narrative from SpaceX consistently emphasizes progress, not setbacks. That doesn't happen when your primary launch facility gets destroyed, the environmental wildcard. However, there's one factor that could still change everything: environmental oversight. While no environmental agency has publicly criticized Flight 9, past launches drew serious legal challenges. After the 2023 pad failure, debris scattered into nearby wetlands. Environmental groups sued the FAA for insufficient review. The FAA responded by expanding hazard zones for subsequent flights and requiring pre-launch environmental assessments. If evidence surfaces of significant contamination or habitat damage from Flight 9, future flights could face increased scrutiny. Environmental lawsuits move slowly but hit hard. A single successful challenge could delay the entire Starship program for months, regardless of pad condition. This is the real threat lurking beneath the surface. Not destroyed infrastructure, but environmental consequences. Elon's shocking response that silenced the critics. And here's where Elon Musk dropped the bombshell that left everyone speechless. Instead of addressing the fake news directly, he did something far more powerful. He released the actual data, the real numbers, the truth that conspiracy theorists couldn't spin. Flight 9 generated a lot of good data, Musk tweeted. Minimal heat shield damage, successful staging. We're moving forward with Flight 10 in 3-4 weeks. No mention of destroyed infrastructure, no emergency repairs, no delays caused by catastrophic pad damage. Just business as usual. The silence from critics was deafening. How do you argue with someone who's already planning the next launch? But Musk wasn't finished. He revealed SpaceX's most aggressive timeline yet, the aggressive timeline that reveals everything. 25 launches per year from Starbase. That's one launch roughly every 2 weeks during active periods. It's an absolutely insane cadence that requires everything to work perfectly. Launchpad, ground systems, regulatory approval, vehicle production. You don't maintain that kind of timeline with destroyed infrastructure. You scale back, you reassess, you rebuild from scratch. Instead, SpaceX is doubling down on their rapid iteration philosophy. Test, analyze, improve, repeat. The faster they fly, the faster they learn. The faster they learn, the sooner they reach operational capability. This aggressive timeline only makes sense if their fundamental infrastructure remains intact and their regulatory pathway stays clear. But there's still one more twist to this story that nobody saw coming. Starship Flight 9, conclusion, the truth that changes everything. So here's what really happened. Flight 9 didn't destroy the launch pad. The fake news fooled millions. But Elon's response revealed something far more important than infrastructure damage. It showed us how quickly misinformation spreads and how powerful real data becomes when the truth finally comes out. SpaceX is planning 25 launches per year. That's not the timeline of a company rebuilding from catastrophic failure. That's the pace of a team pushing toward Mars. But here's the deeper question that keeps me up at night. If we can't get the basic facts right about a rocket launch that happened in broad daylight, with cameras rolling and officials watching, how can we trust anything we see online anymore? The space industry moves fast, faster than traditional media can keep up. That's why we're here, cutting through the noise, bringing you the real story behind every launch, every failure, and every breakthrough. Because space isn't just about rockets, it's about humanity's next chapter. And that story deserves to be told accurately. What other facts about SpaceX do you think might be completely wrong? Drop your thoughts below. You might be surprised by what we uncover next.